Hello. Welcome to the Kensington Corner. I'm Tom.
And I'm Jeff.
Today we are going to talk about I'm in my early 20s. I don't have life figured out. What is happening and why not to freak out?
See, that's a really interesting topic for me because I'm in my early 30s and I don't have life figured out and I'm panicking.
And I just turned 30 and I have no idea what life has in store for me.
Are you panicking though is the question?
Not at all.
Oh, I am.
Oh, well, I'm not.
Tom, tell me how not to panic.
How not to panic?
Yeah.
We're young. You just got to go with it.
Young? Compared to what?
Compared to the 20-year-olds we're talking to right now. But no, I mean, Jeff and I were both at one point early 20-year-olds who thought we had a career ahead of us and didn't pan out. And now we're 30-something-year-olds trying to conquer college, conquer med school. And we're constantly around people who are way younger than us, who are just having meltdowns about what to do next in life.
Yeah, man, it's kind of weird. Like when you're out there, I guess, I mean, maybe I kind of felt it when I was 19, 20 years old.
Did.
That like you're supposed to have everything figured out. Like I was talking with one of my lab mates the other day, and she was like, "Well, my mom wants me to do this," and I was like, "Well, what do you want to do?"
You want to do, yeah.
And I don't think she really knows. And,
no.
And like I said, I can't really say anything about that because I completely decided to change the course of my life when I was, in my early 30s. So,
yeah. I mean, I got out of the military at 28 and was kind of like, surprise.
So why is this a thing that you have to have your whole life figured out when you're...
It's socially an American thing, man. It really is.
You don't think that I've got a lot less experience outside of American culture than you. You don't think it's you don't think that's quite as big of a deal in the other parts of the world? No,
I mean I believe in Europe that, and I definitely could be wrong about this, but I do know in European countries that I have been to that it's very, very common for people to live in the compound, to live at home until 26.
Okay.
And that's also why we have the insurance, you're on your parents' insurance till 26.
Oh, wait, we're not talking about healthcare, are we?
But you know what I'm saying. No,
dude,
we're not
you did
talking
not just drive this conversation to healthcare, did you?
But that's where it comes from, is that, that's a very American thing that, I got to be 18 and be out on my own and do, and it's just not true.
Dude, in my mind, I look back at it, it's that is literally the most insane thing you could ever ask an 18-year-old, right? Is hey, you just graduated high school. What do you want to do until you die?
Well, yeah, I mean, and apparently, we both know that your brain's not even done forming for another half a decade at that point. So
yeah, what 25, mid-20s, something like that?
24, yeah, and it's at the point to where we're in a society now that is putting so much stress on these kids to figure it out, and we've done this. We've been through several finals weeks as adults. And the funniest thing for us is we prepared so much during the semester that we're not having these meltdowns during finals weeks.
No, it's actually really funny to me. With a lot of my classmates, you sit around and they talk about, oh, I'm so stressed out and this is so terrible and this, that, and the other. And I'm literally hey, this is as good as your life gets.
Yeah, this is the pinnacle of fun that you have. This is it.
No, it's actually insane, and you can't you can't convince them otherwise. But it's it's bad. It really is. I feel bad for them because they should be enjoying it.
Well, and the thing is that their parents have put, and ours as well, in some aspect, have put a not imaginary. I won't say imaginary, but they put a certain level of expectation above what we are supposed to do as a society. What are we supposed to do? And I think that's just such a farce. I really do believe that, because right now at my age, I feel, you know, and I'll be 31 in July, and I really feel like I'm at the beginning of what I'm supposed to be doing, if that makes any sense at all. You know, what I'm destined in quotation marks to do.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I look back on my college career and my professional career after college, and I think to myself, man, I literally wasted a decade. I'm way behind the curve.
Right. Yeah. But I don't see it like that.
No, I don't feel like that at all, actually. I mean, I think looking at it, I think that's kind of my inclination to think that, but I look at where I'm at and what I'm doing and how satisfied I am, and I'm happy where I'm at. And I think that's kind of part of it is you do not have to have it figured out, but, you know, maybe have an idea of where you're going, what you're doing.
Right.
Maybe that's the important marker, not so much like get into your career, do what you're going to do. And that's the end all be all. Like there's a very, very heavy stress in our society to get into that. And I mean, but you look at the numbers. I mean, how many people change careers over the course of their adult lives?
A ton. And that's what I told you last year when I went to that pre-med conference, and I went to that non-traditional setting, and the non-traditional room that they had. And I was like, oh man, like it's going to be just me, you know, and I walk in and I'm the youngest person there at 29, and I'm like, what is happening?
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is, you know, you look at it and it's really easy when you're 20 years old to think, oh my God, I say this all the time to a lot of my classmates. They're like, oh, you're old. And I'm like, I'm not that old.
No. Yeah. No.
And like the gap from their perspective, the gap from 20 to 30 is huge. But and from my perspective, the gap from 30 to 20 is like it was yesterday.
It was yesterday. Yeah.
And I got way more cool stories to tell than they do anyway.
Yeah, well, and you're one, emotionally intelligent, two, the wisdom, we'll say wisdom.
That's a strong word.
It is, but you know that you have gained over the last decade plus of living life, it translates into this world. Because realistically, the college game is still kind of political. You know, it's especially when you're speaking with professors who understand that your maturity level is a little higher. There is a certain aspect of what you and I are doing right now that transcends being 18, 19, 20, because we're still learning the same information that they're learning, but we're seeing it in such a different context.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and you and I have talked about this before, though, being 30 and being in college and having been in a career, it's the dynamic is like with your teaching assistants, the dynamic with your professors is so much different.
Yeah.
You come at it from a completely different angle. Like you're kind of like, I remember the first time I was in college, I was just like kind of scared shitless of a lot of my professors. Yeah.
And there's no anxiety there. Well, and the funny thing is now is that I find that most of my professors are afraid of me.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I mean, not just because of like dude, you're a huge dude. Like, I think physically, like you intimidate them is part of it, but it's kind of that thing that, when they tell you something, they're so used to people when they say something agreeing with how
their
it is.
Ideology.
And,
that's it.
And when you've been through it all, you're just kind of like, that's actually not how it is.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a curveball for a lot of them, that they don't really know how to handle that. Like
when you challenge the narrative, they're like, wait, this is not supposed to be happening. And you're like, well, what about this? And they're like, that's something that I don't think that a lot of times, and that's what I talk about with emotional maturity. I don't believe that 18, 19, 20-year-olds, when you start seeing it in 21, 22-year-olds, they have the ability to kind of be like, hey, this is different, what about this, and you start seeing it in grad students. But those 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they're the status quo, man. They're so used to that high school public education that America has taught them to sit and only be talked to, or only ask questions when being asked, basically. And so it's a different platform, because it's very funny. I'm part of several clubs on campus, and one of the clubs that I'm an officer in, I often hear times, we'll be in our little group chat, and they'll be like, oh, we have to ask, so-and-so to make sure it's okay. And I'm like, you're all adults. You don't need permission. Just do it.
Yeah. That kind of that aspect, that mindset that, hey, I'm a grown person and I can do what I want.
Right.
Which, I mean, is not always the case. I mean, sometimes you do need, guidance and or permission,
and respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I always strive for, in whatever relationship is, you have to maintain that level of respect. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them all the time.
No.
Oh God.
Hell, we hardly ever agree, and we respect the shit out of each other. So
I mean, sort of.
But we have a chem professor that I would say I respect more than anyone in life. Just one, because on a reality level, he keeps it real, as they would say.
Yeah, but you need to come on our program, by the way.
Yeah, when you listen to this, you know who we're talking to. You need to come on here before I find you on Facebook Messenger again. But it's a total different approach at our age. And the reason we're doing the podcast we're doing now is because we put a thing out that was kind of like, hey, give us some ideas. What, you guys have listened. I think that the last podcast, just the rough unedited version did 200 views in like 48 hours, whatever it was. And we really wanted some feedback on where we were going and what to do. And we had a lot of great feedback. A friend of mine, Rachel Blankenship, I really, really appreciate all your feedback. If you're going to listen to this one, just know that I really, really appreciate all the feedback I got from you on the audio side. But on the other side, we had a ton of people that sent us some ideas. And one of the biggest ones was, hey, you guys are 30, not married, with kids. What do you think? And we were like, Jesus, And then we get a lot of ones that are like, okay, you guys are 30 in college. How is that different from being 18? And it's a social maturity. It's a total different view. We view life totally different. But the thing is that what people don't realize, and what Jeff was trying to say earlier, is that the difference between 20 and 30 is absolutely nothing. Like, it's insane to me how not different it is.
Well, and kind of in the same vein as that, Tom, is a lot of, being around some of these younger folks, like, they really do have, some dissenting opinions, some things that they really don't care for. And I think that among their peer group, they're not afraid to talk about it.
Right.
They're a little more intimidated by, actually bringing that up in conversation, or, if they see something that they don't necessarily think is right, voicing their opinion on that. That happened a couple times with us in one of our classes last semester, where, hey, I'm going to go in, I'm going to argue on, I'm going to go in and argue for myself on, whether it's a test or an assignment or whatever. And they're intimidated to go in there and make that jump. And they don't need to be.
And that's the thing too, is that a lot of times it was kind of like a, not like a, how dare you, but like like a warrior going into the unknown, and I was like, well, no, I deserve these points, so I'm going to go talk to the professor and get my points back. And it was kind of like, when you returned from your mighty quest, and and you had the points, they were like, oh my God, the warrior's returned.
It doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter if something's right, you should stand up for it.
You should stand up for it. Yes.
It doesn't really, I mean, that's one of the really beautiful things, like, about, there's a lot of bad things you can say about, like, American society, but like the whole egalitarian nature of it all, like the fact that, hey, no person is better than any other person in this society. Like, stand up and fight for what's right. Like, don't be intimidated, because at the end of the day, yeah, maybe they're a professor, maybe they're your teaching assistant, but they're still just a human too. So,
well, and we've really narrowed this down to just college students, but we're also talking to the 23 to 30 crowd as well.
oh, absolutely.
If you have a horrible boss and you're not happy in your life, I'm not saying quit your job, but you have a right to stand up and speak your mind and talk about things.
That's undoubtedly a lesson you can take to the workplace.
No, 100%.
People. I mean, I don't know. You kind of came from a little, your work experience is a little different than.
Yeah, but even in the military, you have a right to kind of just. I've had several open-minded. I've had one closed-minded. And I rarely use ignorant to describe people. I've had one close-minded, ignorant person who he was just a pathological liar. We won't even go to that. But I had three really good guys who were open-minded and you could speak your mind to. But I do agree that it's very, very hard in the military to try to get a point across because there's a inferiority complex there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just kind of a different environment too. I think in some ways, it definitely it grooms you to like stand up for yourself and what's right though.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things like I definitely saw in my work environment, and I definitely see in school too, is people are told, hey, this is the way things are, and don't even bother to question it or argue it, or
we're taught that from a very early age.
Oh, definitely. It's a very cultural thing. I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think too is that like I know you and I have spoke privately about private work experiences for you and how that affects people, but I definitely see it too in the 23 to 30, 23 to 40 crowd. I won't even put a cap on 30, 23 to 40 crowd. I can't tell you how many times I have logged on to Facebook and seen the craziest post about, how unhappy people are with their jobs, with their social status in life, with their spouse, things like that. And it's kind of like, this is my big thing is I don't understand. My big thing is I'll never tell you, hey, quit your job. Hey, divorce your spouse. Hey, you know what I'm saying? But what I will tell you is that have you not taken a step back and looked at where you are? Have you not tried to make adjustments, make changes, if you're not happy with what you're doing, there's no reason to freak out about it. Just make some changes.
Yeah. At some point you just kind of have to take a leap, right? You have to make a change.
Right.
It's what's the old saying? Like the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again the same way. And if you're not happy doing something, odds are you're never going to be happy doing it.
Well, no. And the thing is, too, is that's what's leading to people having these freakouts and these meltdowns and not understanding why they're not happy. I mean, you and I, we're in our early 30s, and I wouldn't say we're content, but we are content with where we are. But we understand that there's a path and a vision and a future and a goal.
Oh, absolutely. It's being content where you are in the moment, but knowing that tomorrow or in a year, that's not good enough.
No. And that's
it's that factor of, personal, professional development and growth.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that I think a lot of people are they're pigeonholed into careers and majors and societal standards and debt. Debt's another big one that we never really talk about, that they just they don't know, they're drowning and they don't know where to go from here. And Jeff, and the thing is too, is that we're talking from experience. I mean, you guys have to realize is that we try to be as transparent as possible as we can. I mean, it's 2019, right? So 7 years ago, I was on the cusp of a divorce with $90,000 in vehicles and over $400,000 in homes, and what was 7 years ago? I was 23. Jeez, I just turned 24, I guess. And was a child and had no idea what I was doing in life. Like it's insane to me. One, that I didn't have the wherewithal to know what I was doing, but people change, and the thing is that resiliency, you can get out of where you're going. There are things that you can do to change, adapt, and you don't have to be unhappy and freaking out all the time and not knowing what's going on.
So what do you think of kind of like this idea of you don't necessarily have to know exactly what you're doing, but like do some damage control, like don't make any major screw ups along the way? Like,
yeah, no, I mean don't get arrested, don't get a felony.
Yeah, don't get caught with drugs.
Don't get caught with drugs. In the states that weed is legal, good for you guys. If you're in the state of Kansas where we are, don't get caught with drugs,
Don't roll through a stop sign.
Jeff got a ticket for rolling through a stop sign the other day, but that's not terrible. Do not get a felony. And sorry, I had to take a sip of the wine here. What you guys have to realize is that there is Jeff, repeat the question just so I know exactly what I'm about to say.
I forgot what the question was already. Oh, no, I was talking about the idea of like, you don't have to know exactly where you're going, but like, don't, have like a kind of a damage control mentality. Like, don't make any major screw ups along the way. Like,
and major screw ups. And that's what I'm talking about with the purchasing of homes. That's such an American thing. I just had a conversation with a client of mine the other day, and I'm very, very super proud of this guy, like hard worker, but he didn't get a car payment. But what he did do was take $35,000 out of savings, and he bought a new Tesla. Now, he has been driving a 2004 Camry since he's been an adult. That's awesome. That's great. He's not putting himself in any situation, but there's somebody out there right now who's making half the money he's making, who's been jumping
a $700 truck payment,
right? Who's been jumping from car payment to car payment to car payment. That said, "Oh, that new Tesla Model 3 is coming out. Time to cop it," and he's paying $660 a month at 8% interest.
That whole idea of like living within your means, though, that's a whole nother topic to be like on, right? I mean, we could.
Oh, no, it is. But I really do believe that it jumps right into freaking out. When you talk about the 20s, because there's a certain mentality with, hey, I'm 23. Where do I go from here? I just got my first job. What do I do? I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy all this new shit for my loft. I'm going to buy a brand new car. I got a new job. Let me go buy a new car. I got to buy a new wardrobe. Oh, I got to get a puppy. Oh, I got to, the list goes on and on and on.
I can say from experience that nothing like sets off your panic button like financial instability.
No, yeah. So as everyone knows from our first podcast, we both deal with anxiety. There is nothing greater in life than the anxiety of a bill collector calling you.
I mean, even if you're not to that point, just the panic of, hey, so I have to pay this bill next week, and I also need some groceries, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
The power's real nice. And, Jeff and I both, we're at a point in our life right now where we do not have car payments, and that's self-choice, by trial and error. And it's liberating, but it's also a very, very social construct that I believe that American society has built up, that we have to have the newest iPhone. We have to have the newest car. We have to have, the new, whatever Samsung Galaxy that's out, the new laptop that's out, everything. The new AirPods from iPhone just dropped yesterday, or last week, whenever it was. And there's always this new. And the reason I believe that ties into what we're talking about is because you already have all this stuff you're trying to figure out in life. What career path I'm going to do? Is the degree I chose right? Are the decisions I'm making right now, are they going to benefit me later? Can I afford the loft I'm living in? Can I afford the apartment I'm living in? Can I afford that new mortgage? And then you're just stacking new stuff all over again.
Oh, absolutely. And, kind of to reel us back around just a little bit, it's absolutely insane the way our society does things. The fact that you're going to ask an 18-year-old who literally just graduated from high school, been living with mom and dad, we need you to make decisions here in the next several years that are going to basically set the course of your life. It's unrealistic to ask people to make that decision. So I guess part of it is you've got to learn. Some people can do that. I know I have some friends who they knew exactly what their life trajectory was going to be, and they went out and they made it happen. But for most people, that is not a realistic expectation.
No, it's not at all. I have one guy that I always reference when I tell stories about, and I won't name drop him, but when he hears this, he'll know what I'm talking about. He went to a small college. It's the University of Virginia, Wise. So I believe when they graduate, they get like a University of Virginia diploma, but it's in Wise, Virginia, which is literally, if you've ever been to Wise, Virginia, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, nobody's ever heard of it. And so he graduates, and, I don't really hear much, kind of keeps it on the low for a few years. And then about a year ago, this guy bought a Ferrari. Now, he's a year younger than me. I'm sitting here like, what? And, but he's one of the few and he's a hard worker. I watch what he does. I just commented on his thing the other day about Dale Carnegie, the book, and then I have the new one, and we're constantly talking about things. And I see this, and I'm like, man, this guy's putting in the work. He's putting in the work, right? But this is an anomaly. This is one guy that I know. I don't know anyone else who's doing work like that.
So what advice do you have then for somebody that, I guess, that group we're talking about, that young, late teens, early 20s group? Like, what do you do? How do you move forward? How do you make that decision, in your opinion?
I think there's two things.
Okay.
That I am very financially focused on, that I am. But I do fully believe in all my heart that, one, finances are not important. If you are able to cover the spread, right? If you're able to cover your bills and you're able to cover to what makes you comfortable in life and makes you happy, then you're financially stable, right? I 100% do not believe that you need to make $100,000 a year to be happy. I don't believe that. And that's the magic number, right? 6 figures, right? Everyone talks about, I got to make these 100 G's. I do not believe that. I believe that if you are making $40,000 a year and your significant other is making $40,000 a year, or even if you're single making $40,000 a year, I believe that is okay. I really do. And I think that there's too much emphasis on this product of money, right? Okay, so we'll go with that. That's number one. Number two, I really believe that being content is not enough. So if you are content with what you're doing, right? Jeff and I are content right now with what we're doing. So does that mean for the next 20 years that Jeff and I are going to be going to school, living, off nothing, trying to earn degrees? No, it's not. Do we know that the path that we're on is going to make us happy? No, we don't. But we do believe in what we're doing. And we're hoping that leads to some kind of self-fulfillment that will then make us happy. And so I truly believe that a lot of people in life have chosen careers or chosen paths that are only making them content.
But, I mean, I guess I would, in a way, challenge that point, just because, and I'm not saying for me personally, because content's not really good enough, but there are people who they are okay with content and happy with content. And I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of times that I wish I was built that way.
Right, but and I also and not tagging my own self in this, but I truly believe, and when I say content, I mean what it means to you to be happy. So content to us will never be that, but to someone else who we may look at and say, hey, that person's content, that person's happier than we'll ever be.
So one of the things you mentioned was kind of like the financial aspect of it all. And one of the things that really bounces into my mind when I think about that is I look at actually my younger brother, who he's a great role model for me. He's a firefighter, and he went the JUCO route.
Right.
I mean, and I know a couple people that I go to school with now that's the route they went. And I'll tell you what, that is one thing I wish I had realized when I was getting into school the first time is, man, that is a great way to really get yourself ahead in the financial game.
Right.
Is to go that route. And you save so much money doing JUCO, and I mean, you talk to kids everywhere. They're saving money on tuition going to JUCO. They're living at home going to JUCO. They're saving a ton of money. You're talking about the difference between maybe a couple thousand a year going to JUCO versus I don't know what do you figure the average year at a state university costs?
It's expensive, and that's also another false narrative that. I mean, honestly, I won't say the media. The media has not pushed it, but American society has pushed this. I mean, literally, the schools are making money off kids, and we know that. But there's this false narrative that, like, these prestigious universities, these universities have only been around, like, what? What do you think the oldest university in America is?
I don't know, a couple hundred.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say 120. 130. How old? No, 140.
No, I mean they're older than that.
How old do you think Yale is? Yeah, I bet it is. I
have no idea. But KU is what founded the year after the Civil War.
Yeah, so that's what 140.
That's like coming up on 170 almost.
Jesus, God,
you're bad at math.
Well, you know I'm bad at math.
I may be completely wrong on that, so nobody that goes to KU skin me for that comment I just made.
Well, I mean KU's what 1876.
Well, I thought it was like 1865, but I could totally be wrong.
That's 100% right too. We're horrible students.
But
that's
school
what I'm
spirit
saying.
is lacking.
You know, in the grand scheme of things, these universities that are considered prestigious, they're not that old, and so we're putting this value on something that's what's considered a traditional generational thing, but it's only a couple generations old, like 3 generations.
You know, you and I are the same age that, you know, growing up in the 90s, that's just what you did, right? Was you grew up, you went to high school, you went to college, and you got a job, right? That's a narrative. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, things have changed since then.
Social media has changed that.
I don't think it's just social media. I think there's a lot of factors that come into play on that. I mean, you talk about the economy. Yeah. I mean, some of the best people I know right now are, you know, associate's degree holders or trade entrepreneurs, trade school people. Exactly.
I have a ton of friends back home who in high school, not were made fun of, but were kind of like considered the redneck crowd or the hillbilly crowd, and those guys are making like 6 figures being welders right now. Like, come on, dude.
Absolutely. I went to school and got a history degree, and I have never done a job with that a day in my life. Yeah. And how much did I pay to do that?
Exactly. Electricians, welders, you know. And so I think there is something obviously to be said too about there are a ton of what's that show that came out a couple years ago, probably a couple decades ago? It's called like Dirty Jobs or something.
Do you remember talking about Mike Rowe's show?
Yeah. That's it. And he was literally like all the time, like we're growing up in this society where it pays to be a banker, it pays to be, you know, whatever. And this guy's like, oh, hey, here's how you can make 60 grand being a plumber. Like it's kind of crazy when you really think about it, that these jobs that are frowned upon or these jobs that we were told not to take are kind of leading the way in the economy now.
Well, absolutely. And that's not to say, like, I'm not trying to smash down. I loved getting a history degree. That was great. And honestly, our society, we do need those sorts of degrees, but we don't need them in the capacity that we're turning out those sorts of degrees. It's kind of that idea of, you know, going into something that's, you know, doing something that's needed.
No, I agree.
Necessary.
Well, you know, and that's even my degree path, you know. I mean, when you look at mine, like behavioral neuroscience, right? Now, that's a little specific when you come to psych, but I think statistically wise, psych's like one of the worst degrees you can get as an undergrad.
Oh, and tons of folks get a psych degree, right?
Yeah, but they don't do anything with it. I know someone who's a psych major who's a, what do you call it before kindergarten?
Preschool.
Like a preschool teacher.
Did they not have that in the Carolinas?
I don't know if we had that. We had daycare. But you know, she's a preschool teacher, and you look and you're like, dude, you're like 80 grand in debt, and you're teaching preschool. Like, what, you know? But it also speaks to volumes to people who do go out and get their masters and do go out and get their PhDs, because that's what the system's designed for.
Oh, absolutely. And
it's more money.
And that's the thing, is I'm not sitting here trying to say that, you know, these degrees aren't worthwhile, but they are. There's a very narrow percentage of people that are going to get those degrees and go do something related to that field, whether it's continue into academia or and fact of the matter is, a lot of those degrees that is the only choice when you go get a degree like that, is you either go do something different or you stay in school and continue down that route.
Yeah. And, you know, and there's a ton of things you can do. My thing is that you're seeing now a generation who, one, is fed up with college debt. Two, is fed up with what they consider lack of jobs. And by I mean lack of jobs, lack of jobs. They're not able to find jobs in their field. And I really think that develops to what I keep referring to as the freak out. You know, you're seeing these 18 to, and I'm going to use the word 40, but it's probably not that dire. We'll say 35, because I do know it's people that are older than us that are having these issues as well. So 18 to 35 who are literally looking back and saying, what am I doing? You know, where am I going? And, you know, the one thing that Jeff and I are not going to touch on is teen pregnancy and early pregnancy, because that also is another attrition to, you know, a lot of freakouts that people are having as far as single mothers, single fathers, even early married couples trying to find jobs that Jeff and I are not even qualified to speak on.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I'm just kind of sitting here listening to what we've been talking about. Like, this is not really an indictment by any means of the American university system. I just think that we're in this mindset in this day and age that that's the only choice. And I really feel like, you know, if I had a kid, I would say, you know, if you want to go to college, that's great. Go do it. You know, go pursue whatever degree you want to do. But I honestly, I don't think college is the way to go if you're not certain what you want to do. I think it's a colossal waste of money in a lot of cases. Is that too harsh?
No, I agree. And I would say that I believe it's a colossal waste of money. Because how many times have we talked to kids who are just like, I have no idea what I'm doing? Or how many times we talk to kids who are sophomores, juniors, and they're like, I didn't understand that classes were going to get this hard. I need to change my major.
Oh, absolutely. Or how many kids do you see that just don't care at all?
Well, yeah, there's a ton of that, because I don't think that the realization of the impact that this is about to have on their life is about to hit them. I don't think that's happened yet.
Well, and now that I already said this isn't an indictment of the, you know, higher education system in this country, I will say that, I mean, I honestly feel that I don't know, half of the people I go to school with, like, they don't belong in college.
Well, no, I agree with that. And that's the thing too, is that when do we as a society decide, like, hey, you know, this is really, I guess really who decides whether or not someone goes to college, right? And that's one. Two, at what point as a parent do you look at your child's grades, or you look at what, you know, and they're adults at this period, right? But at what point do you look at it and say, like, hey man, like, maybe it's time to do something else? Like, we had that one kid last semester that we were sitting in the study room and I helped him do like it was a bio, wasn't it?
It was a biology problem.
It was a biology project, and he had no clue.
Oh, and he sat there staring at that thing for like 10 minutes.
And it was a simple math issue. And at what point do you look at a guy like that and say, hey man, not talking
higher education is not your calling.
It's not your calling, and not talking shit on you at all. This is just not what you're supposed to be doing.
Do you feel like as a society we're afraid to make those distinctions though?
Oh yeah. We're in a PC culture now to where you can't call out anybody. You can't do that. That's totally against what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I think that in reality we're really doing a disservice.
Well, yeah, because we're pushing people. Okay, so the one thing, and again, yeah, this is not an indictment of in the college situation. But,
it sounded like an indictment.
It does, but even American high school, American universities, we push people through. I mean, how many classes have we been in where people shouldn't have passed and it was pushed through? Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. That's a big thing. So there's a certain thing that happens where it's kind of like, is this really what you need to be doing? And it's no. And the thing is, too, is that, going back to our total, getting off our soapbox here, going back to our total original point was that is what's causing these freakouts, because you're having 21, 22, 23-year-old kids graduate college that probably should have never been there to begin with. Then what are you doing? You're pushing them out in the real world where they're getting actual jobs, and there's no reason at all they should be in charge of anything, and it's mind-blowing.
Well, that kind of twists to a whole nother topic. I mean, another topic, but I guess another aspect of the topic is I look at how school goes for me now compared to 10 years ago when I was in school for the first time, and it is insane what I guess my level of maturity and understanding, like how school is so much easier. So no joke, I was sitting there. My enrollment opens up tomorrow.
Right.
I was sitting there looking at my at my grades basically from KU. And I was looking, two of the classes that I took last semester. I straight up and did great in them. I mean, I'm like 98% totals in the classes. I straight up failed. Like that is insane. And do you think I failed those classes because I am so much smarter than I was back when I took them? Or are there some other sort of traits that are making me succeed now?
I don't believe that it's that you were smarter now. I do believe that focus has changed. I do believe that visions have changed. And I do believe that there is a certain blueprint game plan that you're going with now that you probably didn't have prior.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing, you basically hit on everything, that I'm better at studying. I'm more focused. I think that maybe the biggest thing, I think that kind of the thing that underlies all those issues is, I think now that I'm in my 30s, I'm older, and I definitely have a sense of urgency about what I need to do, the things I need to get done to get to where I want to be, which I definitely never had when I was in my 20s.
Well, no, and that's the thing too about age, is that it sneaks up on you.
Oh, it absolutely goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's when you're 30, you look back at your 20 and that was yesterday. When you're 20, you look at 30 and say that's an old person.
Right. And which is 100% not true, which is kind of weird.
We're so old.
We are very old. And I believe that it comes back to the point too that I don't know. I that's the hard thing too, is that we know several 19-year-olds right now who I don't know if they're more focused than we are. They may be. That may be, they may be. But they kind of know exactly their game plan. And that's awesome. And there's an envy there, because I wish at 19 I knew my game plan. I knew what I was doing. But then, that's a small percentage. That's an outlier,
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But in the same vein, I think probably you and I are thinking of the same people when we say this, that there is a level of stress to their situation that they're also not prepared to handle.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, have you seen that with? Yeah, I know you've mentioned it. You've seen that with multiple of our classmates who are extreme. I mean, honestly, these kids are smarter human beings than I will ever be in my life.
Right.
And they do great in their classes, but they've been at it for 7 months now, basically 8 months.
Right.
They're freshmen, or maybe they've been at it a little longer. They're sophomores, and it's starting to catch up to them because they don't know how to operate with with that sort of stress, which is something I feel like I do know how to handle now. Right.
Right. No, and I do believe that there's a certain amount of knowing what you want out of life. I believe that comes down to a lot of things too, is that there's a certain amount of, hey, is what I'm doing right now worth it? And a lot of 18, 19, 20, 21, and moving all the way up into when you get your job and you're moving into 25, 26, people don't know if they're worth it. There's certain people who go to work every day and they literally go, is what I'm doing worth it? Is this worth it? And most of the time the answer is no, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and not to really switch subjects, but that's one of the things that I know I am grateful for every day is, I may be 30, but like I have no obligations to anybody but myself.
Exactly.
That makes what I do every day. My life is so self-centered. It's right. Insane sometimes, but I couldn't be that way if I had a wife or kids. It would be even a bigger game changer, I think.
I believe so.
And so I think, that's such a huge part of, being able to be an older person and go back to school, and not to say it can't be done. There are people who are married who have kids that make it work every day. But I would especially encourage people who, are in their late 20s, their early 30s. If you don't have those, don't be afraid to make the leap.
No, yeah, definitely do it. And even if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, don't be afraid to go against the narrative and take a year off, take 2 years off, take 3 years off. Maybe college isn't for you. That's a big thing that people aren't realizing, because people have pushed and pushed and pushed and said, you got to go to school, you got to go to school, you got to go to school. And
Absolutely.
It's not true.
And, that kind of brings around another point, is this idea of failure. Failure is so taboo in some ways in our society. Nobody ever talks about their failures. But I think you would agree with me when you say that sometimes your failures, sometimes your biggest struggles are the most important things, and mapping out how you perceive yourself and how you perceive your future. And failure, it sucks. Failure's terrible. I've failed so many times it's not even funny. But if you can construct that in a way that motivates you and drives you, failure can be a really great tool, actually.
Yeah, my whole life has been marred by failures, and so I think that every day when I talk about where I'm going or what I'm going to do, I really think that a lot of that I'm pushing on myself has been the failures that I've had. I really believe that that's my motivation, and that's really, really cliche to say, but it is, and a lot of people are so afraid to admit that they fail, or so afraid to say, maybe I didn't do the best I could have done in the past. And the thing is, when you're 18, 19, you don't have a lot of skeletons in the closet to work with. When you're 30, it's very easy to look at an 18, 19-year-old and say, dude, I failed for the last 12 years.
Well, I was one of those people that when I got out of high school, literally I had never failed at a thing in my life.
Right.
Or I take that back, but I never failed at anything major.
Well, I failed all through high school with those things.
I did not know how to handle that.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's failure and success, just like happiness and sadness. they are opposite sides of the same coin. And right. How you define each, each of those things matters. You cannot understand how great success is unless you failed, and you can't be happy unless you've been sad. And it's the simple matter thing that we gauge our successes based on our failures. And so, you don't have to be sterling. You don't have to be perfect. and you're going to fail no matter who you are. Everybody does, even if they're not willing to say it.
Yeah, you just got to get the job done.
Exactly.
I mean, that's really it. You got to get the job
that in
done.
and of itself, like being able to just like pick yourself up from, from a failure or, something that's disappointing and knowing that you can rebound from it is, that might be the most important lesson there is, right?
Right. So,
which it's easy to say, like sitting here in the mic, but like Tom knows, I was trying to get in on a research lab at KU. This, in the lab, I went in and interviewed. And I didn't get the position, and man, I was down, like straight up. And here I am. Yet I'm saying, oh, it's okay, it's all right. And it doesn't mean it doesn't still feel bad.
No,
because it does. It definitely does. It feels terrible, actually.
Yeah, no, it sucks. I think the main thing that one, why we wanted to do this podcast, and I don't mean this singular podcast, I meant overall, was that we thought that we had something to speak on that a lot of people would want to hear, right? We thought not that we were unique or we were special or anything like that, but we thought we were two regular guys with two opinions that differ from each other. And if someone cared to listen, that would be great. And we really hope that we could help someone along the way with what we were doing. And so a lot with what we're trying to go through and what we're trying to say are our own personal experiences that we're going through. We talk about our mental health. We talk about our failures. We talk about why it's okay to be the age you are right now, because we know our audience. We know most of our audience is going to be between the age of 16 and 40. We understand that. And if you're older than that, don't worry about that. Don't fail either. No.
Thanks, Mom, for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. I really appreciate it. But we know our audience and we know who's going to listen to us, right? And so with that being said, we understand that a lot of people look at us and they're like, man, these guys have it figured out. I promise you that we do not.
Oh, no.
We're just here.
Just,
and we're
like I said, just ask Tom, man. My last week sucked ass.
Yeah, we have no idea what we're doing, but we're trying. And so we really, really feel like we're on the same train that you guys are on. We're on the same vessel. We're all sailing the ship together. And we really just wanted to be able to reach out to people and make them understand, not even make them understand, hope that they somehow understand what we're saying.
Yeah, to share a perspective.
Right, yeah. And that's it. And so realistically, don't freak out. It's going to be okay. Life is going to be okay. You're going to get through everything that you're going through right now.
Are you going to sing for us now?
No, I'm not. But if you're under the age of 30, if you're under the age of 40.
It doesn't matter what age you are. Just don't stop growing. Don't stop dreaming, and don't stop trying to be better at whatever it is you want to be better at.
Don't stop gaining
seriously,
knowledge.
I honestly believe that is when you when you just go to pieces, right?
When you give up, you're dead, man. That's it.
Exactly. You might as well just die.
So if you listen to this and you're under the age of 30, don't freak out.
Yeah, and if you're over the age of 30, don't freak out, because you probably got it figured out better than we do anyway.
Life is young.
All right, we're going to call it a night.
We love you all. Thank you for listening.